he got this. Gardner didn't get it. He fell into the trap. So now it's your turn. So I'm going to write this word in a couple different languages. Or a couple different alphabets, I should say. It's only relevant in one of the languages in terms of its meaning, as far as I can tell with the tablets. So here's the first one. Okay. This is going to be the second one. I think
you got skill.
You're gonna recognize this. Some of the shit, I know it's not, but maybe the chat won't. And you'll have to forgive some of my writing for this letters because I don't actually write in presentation styles like this, and I don't actually write in letters that much. I'm used to like reading them and stuff. So which of these? See, these are all the same word. Or what do you think is the oldest?
The oldest is probably the first one.
Yes! Gotcha, bitch!
Did you really fool me?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Etruscan. This is Phoenician. And this is Hebrew.
Well, I feel like it's an educated guess because I was going based on how straight lined it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Again, this is part of the thing though. When you look at some of these things carved in stone, you have to look at the practicality. You have to look at what metals they had available to them in those eras, right? Sometimes you'll see primitive looking carvings. Sometimes you'll see exceptional looking carvings because the closer you are to the empire, and the very thing that gave the Etruscans so much power is they learned how to mine. Like all the mining operations that they got from their Phoenician ancestors, they had in place, and they were able to do it all in Italy. And so they're the source. So the further you get away as they colonize Britain and then Scandinavia, etc., the further you get away, the more primitive the carving gets, because a lot of this is all going to the empire, to the central places, back in these days. And I'm going to read you some quotes. A lot of this shit was unknown territory not that long ago. And so what this is, though, so these all go right to left, right? This is pei. Pei is like a P in Hebrew, can act like an F as well. Vav, which would be like a U, V, or W. You have Nun, which is an N, and then you have Yod, which is like an I, a Y, or a J. So what this spells is Puni.
Right, and that's the Punic or the Phoenician original name.
Yeah, I can't spring it out with you.
You should have at least let me tell the audience what the word was. I could have guessed it off the Hebrew.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Yeah, well, that's why I knew. I didn't think I was gonna fool you because I know you can read Hebrew. But
no, I'm not at the point of being able to tell the difference between Etrurian and Phoenician yet.
But listen, you will be. It'll take like they're the same alphabets. Like that's why I'm saying once you understand this, and the reason it's easier to learn the Hebrew first is because it's a younger language and there's still a ton of old synagogue documents where you can learn it. Whereas with Phoenician and Etrurian or Etruscan, the problem is back then they were writing on papyrus and birch bark. And so a lot of this shit it's all rotted and gone. All that's left is what we have from tablets. We do have accounts that they had a shitload of stuff left behind, but because it wasn't able to be preserved, we don't even know the language. Like you can't even decipher the language anymore, which is why I think we need to consider the fact that just like the runes are not a language, they're an alphabet. The language itself is going to be more Germanic, right? So we have to consider that the Phoenician, it might not even be an actual language, just an alphabet, just this 16-letter symbolism.
There's already precedent for that in the East, how many different dialect of different language speakers could read the Chinese alphabet, and they spoke, like they would say a different word for what they saw written, but they could all read and write. It's a trade language, so
exactly just like the Chinese. Yep, just like the Chinese.
Yeah, that's probably what we're looking at, is a trade language where it was never really a spoken language. It represented words that in their language might even have a different meaning, which is again why the whole numerical aspect of the system is so important, so that you really know what it is that is being said based on the value of it. And then if it's a mercantile trade language, another reason why the numerical aspect would be extremely important. How much of what, you know?
Yes, and after this, I think you should show that map of Genoa, when Genoa was the Commonwealth of Italy, because that pertains to Columbus. And I suspect this motherfucker already knew America and all this shit. He knew everything because that's part of that, business for what you said. You're like, this thing is just like one giant fucking company that keeps rebranding itself as the empires change. But so this here, it would be this Puni would be written in Greek, right? And then when I add their K and their Ada, whatever, which is like an I or an E, it becomes Phoeniki. And that's their word for Phoenician. So you see Puni in Latin, Poeni. Well, that's the root of Punic and Phoenician. So when people
You think
say,
this also plays into like the name of the Finnish people?
I do, but later on, I mean, it's there in the root, right?
And then the Irish have the whole Fenian thing too going on.
And so like if you look at, but here's the deal though. Let me show you because I'm still on screen share. So when you look, this is the oldest rune stone that mentions Finland. It's G319, and this is dated to like 12, somewhere between like 1200 and like 1500 or some shit like that. And it's using the Italian fixed cross, right? Those are the fixed signs. So if you were to look that out, that's going to be the Gospels, the 4 royal stars. You have Aldebaran, Taurus. You'll have Leo, Regulus. You'll have Antares, Scorpio, and you'll have Fomalhaut. So the symbolism to me, so in terms of like Finnish, yeah, they are the Phoenicians, if you will. It's discovered by that, but by way of Britain, circa sometime between like the late 800s to, the 1200s, because they founded Denmark first, right? So this is the first, like one of the oldest documents with the runes, and it's written in the Vustropidon style. I can only say that word when I think about the Greek, because the way it's written in English, it's Boustrophaidon. But if you look at the accents in Greek, it's Vustropidon. And that's, so what, if people look at one of the links I shared.
Just thinking about Denmark too, the Latin and Greek name for it is Dania, which is philologically Tinia.
Yeah, yes, it is. I didn't even think about that. So I'm posting a link right now. I'll just say oldest Latin inscription. And if you want, you can pull that up. And the audience can pull that up for themselves. So that's written in the Vustropidon style. And where I'm showing, the reason that's significant is that is a technique of the earlier alphabets of this cult wherever it went. And that's it. Now this isn't, people are saying that's where Romulus is buried. I don't buy any, I just don't know anymore about any of that shit, but it is what it is. So just to continue, and we can get to this, whatever, anything you want to talk about, but that Punic is significant because as I showed you in Hebrew, the Pei and the Pei acts like an F or a P. So then you would also have that P changing to the F. That's where you get Fenians. That's Irish term for Phoenicians, right? And think about like all the Finn McCool, all that shit, Mikhail, however you say his name. Then you would also have that F and V interchange. And so you get the Venetians. So once you understand philology, you see there all the same root. And if the only place where it goes back to where it actually signifies something is in Etruscan. and it's all related to purple stuff. And like Betham said, that the navigators, if they were Etruscan, they were referred to as Puni. So this is why I'm saying the Etruscans are Phoenicians, and they're descended from them. And this is where it gets interesting, because if you were to look at like the Phoenician word for our letter for R is going to look like almost like a reverse P, right? Like that. And then the Etruscan is going to look like a D with like a little bit of a stem at the bottom, but for all intents and purposes, it looks like a reverse D. And then the R for Greek looks like a P. So Punic is also runic, right? And so if you were to write that in I think it's the Elder Futhark, it would look like they have their R, U, N. Sorry, that N's a little fucked up. How would I do that? N, I, and their C is like a weird. So it would look like runic in the Elder Futhark. So you can see this, that uni, but also that R, keep in mind, that looks like a D in Etruscan. Now we're going to get somewhere, because in the Old Testament, do you remember how the Jews refer to my Lord, because they don't want to say the epithet for Apollo, which is Yod-He, Yod-He, or I-E, or I-H. They say Aduni. So that's what it looks like. So it'd be A. If you were to translate that literally, it would look like. You'll have to forgive my Hebrew. It's absolutely atrocious.
We're gonna have to get you a big ass whiteboard.
I know, I know for sure. But that is Adonis. The Phoenician Adonis is the god of the Old Testament, whose mother is
Mira or Myrrh.
Which is all pertaining to what?
The tree and the sea.
Mar. Yeah.
And Mar, yeah.
The sea. And we've done this with Mario, right? Lord Yo, we call him. But remember we did that with Thalassa? It means it's an Thalassa and Pontos are archetypes for the sea. And so you have the Thalassocrats, which were the lords of the sea. So